I'm always afraid now that people are like pushing AI to build all these like, oh, my tool built or just gave me 10,000 lines of working code. I'm like, that sounds horrendous because now you have to go through it and figure it out. And like, who says that that's like, can you maintain that? Can you add to it? Can you scale that?
Lovely to meet you, Shane. You have had what looks like a fascinating career journey when I look on LinkedIn. I see things like web development, graphic design, sysadmin, crisis communication, firefighter paramedic, infrastructure, and now consulting in software. I'd love to hear that journey and understand a bit what's behind that.
Yeah, so I mean, I've always been interested in computers growing up. I did lots of tinkering, did computer programming in high school, things like that, and just looking for a job. And I was really interested in web design. I might blame MySpace for it, but yeah, definitely got interested in web design. Found an internship to do that with a mixture of graphic design as well. I used to be really big into art. And I was just trying to give like a full stack web developer type feel. That went on for not too long. It's an internship, and then got into from the graphic design, did some typesetting. So I really enjoyed doing that. Found that in the newspaper, that kind of aging me, um, and moved on to system administration. We had a really big web hosting company that was it was a startup at the time. I was number 12, I think, and I helped grow that to, I believe by the time I left, like 4 years later, it grew up to about 200, still around today. But I was in the web hosting scene for a while, moved all the way up to system administration. And it was definitely the Wild West back then. I remember that was the same time that the cloud started becoming a thing. So in web hosting, that had a really interesting thing going on, interesting journey trying to figure out how to do that. We were automating things with bash scripts because we didn't really have, well, we definitely didn't have Terraform or Ansible. Learned how to use Git there because that also came on the scene around then. So that's definitely been a journey. But I was in the US at the time, and I just remember pulling 70, 80 hours of a work a week because it was a 24/7 operation. Our company used to just give us Red Bull all day long, Monsters, whatever you wanted, build towers out of the cans that we drank. Probably not the healthiest environment, but at some point I decided to be a firefighter paramedic. I thought it would be less stressful than the environment that I was in. And
That's an interesting view. Running into burning buildings and stuff would be
yeah,
less stressful.
way more
Okay.
fun, a lot less stressful, for sure. I really did enjoy that. It took me a while to get into that program, but by the time I got in there, I really enjoyed it. I did that for about 7 years. Um, During that time, yeah, I increased my certification to be a paramedic. I also, they found out that I was really good at computers, which wasn't really normal for a lot of firefighters. So I ended up becoming part of their incident management team where we got deployed all across the US for any emergencies. So snowstorms, floods, hurricanes, volcanic eruptions even was on our list when Hawaii had that happen. I've been in lots of different situations, but a lot of the times when these natural disasters occur, their communication systems get over flooded or break down, and it's really difficult for the emergency workers to actually perform their duties from just beyond radio signals, but being able to use computers, set it up in the middle of nowhere when a lot of devastation has happened, when everything's been, let's say, flattened from a hurricane or a tornado. There's nowhere to go, so we have to build these like essentially impromptu, like temporary shelters, set up our computers, bring all that in. So I was like the first responder in that sense. Went in there first, built all these communication setups. Also had satellite communication systems that we had to also learn how to put up, and did lots of other type of emergency things. My daughter always said that if the end of the world happened, that she would definitely stick with me because of all the things I've learned of how to deal with communications, electricity, and all that other stuff. in regards to in an emergency situation. So that was just an experience in itself. So I was never really far from computers or tech, even when I was a firefighter paramedic for that time. I also did web design on the side because every firefighter has a second job, and that was just mine. So I did a lot of that. There are a lot of entrepreneurs in firefighting, so I kept with my web development with them. Let's see. So how did I come back to computing? So basically, I moved to the UK, and firefighting is something that is really difficult to restart from the bottom. And unfortunately, countries don't necessarily let you just continue where you left off because of the certifications and differences. And let's say the firefighters here aren't even paramedics, so that's another issue that it just didn't go with it. So I decided to just go back to computing to make it easier for my move. My husband was the one that got me to move here. So if you're looking for the reason, it's essentially following him. And yeah, from there I worked with BBC's research and development department doing more communications and media tech, but I really got to explore AI and machine learning there, which was really great time. I really enjoyed that environment. Then I moved into consulting at Fujitsu, now I work at Armakuni, which is a boutique consultancy, and that's where I've been for the last, I think, 5 years now, and I really enjoy it here.
Oh, that's a fascinating and I think probably fairly unique career and approach. So there's a couple of things I was going to pick up on there. I don't know what it's like around Leeds, where you said you live, but certainly here in Wiltshire, we don't actually have any full-time firefighters.
Mm,
You couldn't make a living as a firefighter now. They're all retained. I think they get something like 2 or 3 grand a year for that, and then paid
wow.
per hour for the incidents they respond to and for some training. So you'd need a primary job just to be a firefighter, and here you couldn't build a career in it, which I think it's a great shame that we've cut down on those public services. But we're not here to talk about government funding. The real thing of interest was it less stressful running into burning buildings and rescuing people from all those incidents?
Yeah, definitely. I think so. I still think so. I mean, you get to have really fun training with a whole bunch of really great people that you essentially grow up with their families. You know, your families grow up with their families. You essentially share your lives with these guys, um, ladies and gents for both. But uh, yeah, I mean, you only had, depending on how busy the day is, otherwise you'd be training, you would be cleaning the fire station, or cooking. I used to do a lot of the cooking, which I always enjoyed, trying to figure out how to cook for 12 people at our station. Yeah, I thought it was I thought it was a lot less stressful. Of course, like you get these like bursts of stress, but it wasn't like sustained for, all of a sudden a massive WordPress hack came out and all of a sudden you have like 200 calls in the queue. It's not going to be a good time for the next 2 weeks, and it's just that sustained stress versus this is kind of like pockets of stress. It's done and over within an hour, 3 hours, and it's just different stress management skill, I think. But I really enjoyed it. I do like some levels of stress. I think it's exciting. Uh, and I like that, like when the pressure is on, I just don't like that long, sustained, constant stress. So yeah,
I,
and I think it's definitely less stressful than software.
I guess you say it's probably more intense, but more short lived, more acute. And I guess I don't want to stereotype, but in software, we're perhaps known as being a bit more calm and introverted. And that probably has a bit more level of banter, more of a camaraderie. And a lot of software, we still have this image of people working alone, or we still have a lot of people saying they want focus time to be on their own, not talk to anyone for 4 to 6 hours on work, where I guess in that environment, you're far more with people almost 24/7, I guess, and far more intensely with them.
Yeah, I think it's unfortunate that software gets that kind of rep. I think it's definitely changed since what people I think view of it in like in the 80s where, you're this nerd in your mother's garage like hacking away, which I've definitely been there, but it's definitely evolved since then for so many reasons, right? Our industry's evolved, got more popular, more lucrative. What that looks like brings lots of different folks, and we have a lot of diversity. Even with remote working, I don't think I think it can be true for a lot of companies, but I think like the company that I work for, I think we do remote really well. We also really believe in pairing. which isn't just for sharing knowledge, but also for that camaraderie, that social aspect of it. It really helps not being alone, getting your work done, pinging off each other, get moving forward, getting some really fun new ideas. But yeah, it is a shame that that view still exists. Um, that we have such diversity nowadays.
Yeah, I want to come back to the firefighting in a minute, but let's pull on that thread a little bit more because pair programming is something I first came across in late 99, early 2000 with Kent Beck's Extreme Programming Explained book. And I've always found mixed responses to it. I guess in the early days, it was trying to suggest it to anyone that was managing a team or was an executive. It was like, hang on, you're going to take two software engineers and one computer. Won't we half the output? Double my costs. That has evolved more recently to far more people being open to it. And instead, the pushback I see more these days is that group of software engineers that want that focused time, want to work alone, think that they work best alone, versus some of us that, well, I enjoy pair programming. I think it's useful. I find it very, very good for not just sharing the knowledge, but as you say, creating that camaraderie and creating that momentum and having somebody to bounce ideas off, somebody to learn from, because no matter how much you know about something, somebody else has always got that other little bit of knowledge that you might not have. And then we've seen the growth more recently of more social programming and mob programming. You mentioned you do pair programming. Do you guys do mob programming, other elements of
Yeah,
that?
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. We do pair programming and mobbing, and in all cases, really, we because we are a consultancy, so we don't necessarily own our own product that we build and mature over time. We have lots of different clients, so that's actually one of our main ways of sharing knowledge with our clients and upskilling them while we also help build what they need help building. So that comes
Yeah,
in with pairing and mobbing.
I think that's a great way to kind of do the consultancy element, isn't it? Because too many consultancies in the past have been billing time and materials. We'll build this, you change your mind. No, that's a change. We'll add some more money. And it's not really that partnership. It's almost not quite confrontational, but your goals aren't aligned. Where if you've got people integrated in the team and you are pairing and you're sharing knowledge, you're, as you say, upskilling them and sharing that as you go. I think it's a much better way.
Yeah, I think that comes from our like deep-rooted practices essentially in the XP framework, where we really bring our customer literally into our team so that we always know and their system really well, but also making sure that we're aligned the entire way through. Like you don't necessarily need that middleman, I guess, in the way, and it makes better for knowledge handover for sure because they're already in the room.
Oh, how easy do you find it to get the engagement of the customers to come and do that?
That's just how we work, really. I think that is our main selling point is that we don't build things for you, but with you. So we
So
make sure that we, yeah, sit down. Like when they purchase our services, basically, they are getting this consultant type, coach type person that will embed or augment within their team, sit down and pair with them every step of the way. It'll be really rare for us to sit by ourselves without anyone on their team also working with us. Doesn't mean that we aren't producing things on our own necessarily, but it means that we're, in the sense of pairing, that we were working together to do something.
so in effect, the customers have self-selected for they're buying into that when they sign up with you. Cool, that's interesting because again, I've seen a lot of engineers or even executives in companies believe that customers won't want to do that, um, particularly in the more traditional enterprises, which I always found quite strange because, again, in around about 2000, I was working on a railway signalling system for Singapore Metro, and some of their signallers flew over here and lived in the UK for 6 months so they could have a customer on site as part of the contract. And that was never Agile or XP, and none of the company. It was a traditional engineering company that nobody had heard of that. But that was just viewed as so important to get that knowledge transfer and to make sure that communication was effective that, like I say, three of them moved over here and lived in the UK for 6 months so that we could have that closeness. Part of that, I think, is why then when I read about XP, it resonated so well.
Yeah, and I think a lot of our customers as well, they come to us because they've done that contractor route. They've done like the big consultancy route where, you have a consultant that comes in, maybe like goes through everything and gives you a bunch of recommendations and leaves, or you get that contractor type consultant where they come in, like a bum in seat, they sit by themselves, they do the job that they were asked to do all to themselves, and then they leave, right? There was no real handover, no upskill for this new piece of tech that's been created. Maybe there's some mediocre documentation, right? And they've been burned by that in the past, and they're just like, what makes you different? How do I know our people are going to be able to handle this when you leave? And it's something where it's when we leave, you have to be able to be independent from us, and so that's our goal, is that you can do this without us by the time we leave. And I think that appeals to a lot of people that have tried that more traditional route before.
That's an awesome approach. I'm going to go back to the firefighting now because you talked about incident management.
Yeah.
And it just made me think as you're talking about that, I hear so many people talk about, well, when we have an outage, we're going to set up a war room, got an incident management process. It's not really anywhere close to what you've experienced, is it? What we do when we start panicking in software about the site being down and prod. And
Uh,
we're rarely facing those kind of challenges. So are there any good lessons you took from that we can apply to incident management if we're, say, running a website? Or
I guess I have a little chuckle every time I hear the word war room, because I'm like, what are we doing here? It's software. Where's the fire? um, but I think the things that you can bring into any, regardless if it's firefighting, paramedicing, if it's incident management where you go into somewhere after tornadoes, devastation, whatever that is, there's still this concept of level-headedness that you have to approach to it, going back to the basics of understand, like when everything is going crazy, it's bringing it back to the basics. It's the ABCs of, of airway, breathing, circulation kind of thing. Like when you do troubleshooting, even when I was, system administrator, it's that same concept of, all right, let's bring it back to the basics. Did you restart your computer? I mean, it's silly things, but it's those basics that actually build that really strong foundation to the harder stuff that we always want to seem to focus on. So, going through the basics, uh, doing them over and over again, training for that as well. Like we have game days, right? Those are really important for, especially for 24/7 operations, people that are in production that have really like high value things in production. When those go down, do you know what's going to happen? Have you actually practiced it? Have you gone through what that is? Because when it all hits the fan, are you going to panic, or are you going to be calm because you already know what to do? Um, and of course, with software, it's really great that you have all this ways of actually automating a lot of your response, right? So being able to go through all of that, preparing for such an event, and being calm when you get there, knowing that there's a process for this. We've already done this many times, and it will get done if we follow the process. And for me, that's what's comforting. So I don't really ever get like, I don't ever go into panic mode necessarily. Of course, there's stress in regards to like urgency with your customers, when their sites are down or when things aren't working, when your product's not working. Yeah, of course, there's stress in that, with that urgency, but there's also that calmness with it because you know exactly what to do because you've done it before and you've done it multiple times, in practice, and now you can bring it to game day, like the actual game day.
I think that brings us a nice segue into, I've seen you write a few times about DevOps and platform engineering. How do you think DevOps and the idea of platform engineering can help with that?
I mean, if we're talking about automation, the way that, let's say, people understand DevOps today and platform teaming today, because that, of course, when you say like what's DevOps, it's knee-jerk responses. It's a culture, not a tool, not a team, not a person. Which absolutely, I agree with that. If you want to refer to it the way that I think a lot of, let's say, recruiters respond to, like, we're looking for a DevOps engineer. Sure, I'll go with it because it's easier to understand what they're trying to say, even though that's not really how they should be using the word. But with DevOps, that's the idea, right? That you own everything that you built, from beginning to end, and that autonomy allows you to move quickly, allows you to own and understand your system. It reduces those handovers, which obviously allows you to respond quickly, and being able to, like, that ownership with your product allows you to make sure, oh, well, allows you, but really encourages you to take care of every point of that to make sure that the tests are there to make sure that everything is automated to like, because now you can build your own infrastructure too, right? So you put the infrastructure as code on there because you're going to do this over and over again. And I think that mindset allows you that ownership mindset really allows you to increase that quality, really take pride in your work, and make sure all the bits are there. Um, and with platform teams, I think it's that concept of product thinking, right? That a lot of a lot of like back end infrastructure type teams, I think, hadn't thought about it that way in the past with product thinking necessarily. They were usually like inundated with lots of tickets and tasks, but never really thought about who their customer was. Are we really building what we're doing? Is it really a product, right? And so now that they have that product thinking, it's able to accelerate what they do, really focus on what the customer, which internal customers, software engineers, right, what they want, and even connect that to the larger, the further out customer, right, like their SLAs and SLOs that are out there. So I think that really has changed how we think about that type of work, that infrastructure type work, that automation type work, if we're using it in that definition sense. Um, I think it really has changed the way we work because of that.
Yeah, I'm like you. DevOps means bringing dev and ops together. Yeah, it's a mindset, it's a culture, not a role or a team. I also think we've lost that battle.
Yeah.
It's just too widely used to mean what I would have thought of in the past almost as a sysadmin or infrastructure team. And I find it quite interesting that, I've got plenty of grey hair. I've been doing this a while. I used to hate the fact that I wrote software and then I had to go and beg somebody in the IT team to deploy it somewhere or give me access to a server that I could install it on and test. So when it got to the point where I ran my own business, I owned the servers and I could access them, it was like absolute glee. And when it got then to the point where cloud and I could be in a big company and I could access it and I could build my own infrastructure, that DevOps thing was amazing, and having the power to build, own, run it was fantastic. I've tend to notice that more over the last 5, maybe as far back as 10 years, we've had that reversal for people that don't remember those days, not as many grey hairs as me, who are now saying, well, I'm a software engineer. I don't want to deal with infrastructure. I don't want to deal with it. I just want to write the code. I think that's a great shame, in that we're missing that. You put it nicely in that you own it, that ownership and the ability to control it and see it and deploy it and have that whole sense of owning everything from the test, the deployment, the environments you want to use. I think that's a great loss. What are your thoughts on that and how people are now wanting just to code?
I've definitely heard, I like with consultancy, right? You go into lots of different companies that have a lot of problems, let's say. Um, and sometimes I forget that there are actually like really slick running companies out there because the ones I get exposed to, like you don't go to a doctor unless you're sick kind of thing. So that's who we are. And I hear this a lot where DevOps isn't a thing, product thinking isn't a thing. If they have a platform team, it's really just infrastructure. Their customers it's still not product thinking involved. And I do hear this every once in a while where like, I just want to code. The QA person writes my tests, right? And I might sprinkle some unit tests in there here and there, but that's their job. And I do hear that, and you can definitely tell there's issues throughout the entire pipeline when that starts happening, right? Lots of waiting around, lots of handovers. Every time you hand a thing over, you lose like 40% of context or something like that. Don't don't quote me on that number, but I can't remember what it was. It's a good amount. Like you lose context, you lose time. Like if you ever do a value stream map, I'm not sure if you've ever done value stream mapping, where you see complete and accuracy, how often, how long does it take for you to actually do the work versus actually getting it done because you have to hand it over, or that complete and accuracy has to come back and forth, back and forth. Especially if you think about the QA, right? Like it's wrong, goes back, it's wrong, it goes back, versus just you being able to own all of that work. Um, that does affect the quality. It affects the speed to deployment. It affects like when that starts happening. I've seen companies where let's say their QA was a massive bottleneck. I'm not going to name names, but let's say it takes like 3 months to get something out from QA because of how complex their system was. What's going to happen then? You're not going to deploy every day, right? You're going to
Not
deploy
even
in big.
close.
No, absolutely not. You don't want to deploy every day. You don't want to have to deal with that now. So it's going to make you release in big chunks. Then your stories get bigger, and now you're having conflicts everywhere. You're having um, lots of quality issues. All those things interconnect when you don't own this pipeline from beginning to end. When you have to wait around, it causes these bottlenecks. And human behavior will change because like no one wants to deal with that. Humans will find a way around it, even if it means holding on to their work a little bit longer, or if it means that if they comment out their test or something to push it through, to get it through, because they don't want to have to deal with it. Humans will work a way around it because it's just how we are. Not because we're trying to be nefarious, but because we're just trying to get our work done, right? And we're not going to let something like that stop us.
Yeah, and we're fallible. We make mistakes and we forget things. And you mentioned whether or not the number 40% is perfectly correct. You mentioned the loss of that context. The times when I've been in environments like that, fortunately not recently, where you build something, you merge it in, and then you wait 3 months for QA. You get a defect back in that. I don't know about you, but I'm struggling to remember what I did last week with my code. I've moved on. I'm working on something else. Go back to something 3 months ago and try and. That's a whole load of ramping back up, getting back into that context, trying to understand what you're doing, what are the requirements of that bit of the system or that code. All that's gone from 3 months ago, and you're spending a whole lot of time spinning back up on it. And then
And,
when you switch
and
back
you're
to what you
losing
were
it.
just doing,
Yeah,
you've lost it again.
yeah. It's like you've
Uh,
lost the context of the work that you were doing to work on this. Yeah, it's horrible. That context switching is so bad for cognitive load, right? Just that back and forth and that waste of time just in the rework that's involved. Like how much time are you really saving by pushing this work off to someone else? You're not. You're actually making it a lot worse for yourself.
yeah, exactly. And we can, even in a shorter term example, we can see it with PRs. An organization, say you build your code, you ship it, you put it on a branch, you open a pull request, you wait for a code review. Then you've got this somewhat nice agile process, perhaps, where they've broken their tickets down and they've got tasks that are going to take 1 or 2 days. So you do 1 or 2 days coding, you open a PR, and then you wait a week for it to be reviewed. That's absolutely crazy to me.
Or you have to ping your friend to go, hey, can you review this for me? They have to stop their context, move back into that context. Yeah, it's definitely a cycle.
Yeah, that's it's one of the things I always thought that was probably the most useful thing I could do as a manager in the way of staying technical and stuff is to, as soon as I see a PR open, because as a manager I'd have a lot of meetings and you've got that 15, 20 minutes between meetings or that 1 or 2 hours where you couldn't maybe jump into something else. But I could start a code review and put my name to it and work through it a bit at a time and at least avoid a bit of context switching for people. But far better, I think, to actually use pair programming for what was intended as the code review and don't have that interruption. Don't
Yeah,
have
and
that interruption to the flow.
that's what we advocate for at my current company at Armory Cooney, that pair programming is your code review.
Yeah.
And I think the first time we usually tell that to people, they're like, absolutely not. It's like people are very scared of that concept. I'm like, but why? If there's two people looking at it, back and forth, you're correcting as you go. And not only that, we're using TDD as well. Uh, and you have this trust in your pipeline with all your tests that you have, all this automation that you have. Like, what's so scary about pushing the code through? You have two eyes of it, or like, why do you need a third one? People usually come around to it after a while when they realize, like, oh, you're right. Like, it, you just literally turn to the person that's sitting next to you, like, can you do my code review? I was like, yes, actually, I can. So, yeah, it usually comes around. It's just a little bit slow, but it's usually
Yeah.
that shock of like, you don't do code reviews? Like, no, not really. I mean, we do, but our feedback is literally seconds.
So the funny thing I find about that when people have accepted pair programming is, and don't paraphrase me, apologies to Kent Beck because it's been a while since I read the book, but I seem to recall that the wording for, we called it extreme programming because we took all the good practices and dialed them up to an extreme level. So code reviews are good. We'll do them all the time. It's called pair programming. I may not have quite quoted him, so my apologies to him, but it was along those lines. So it seems strange to then, well, we're going to code review what a pair program did. Interesting approach. So there's a lot of talk recently about AI becoming a pair programmer for people and the way that AI is going to change software. What are your thoughts on that, Shane?
Yeah, I was picking on this before, but I don't think that AI is a replacement for a human for lots of reasons, right? So, what are we getting out of pair programming? Like I said earlier, it's not just about pair programming isn't just about the code review, right? It's not about the second eyes. It's not about speed. It's actually there's a lot about camaraderie and teamwork in that sense. And as much as people talk to AI like it was a therapist or a friend, it isn't. It doesn't actually care in that sense, right? So you're still working by yourself. You just have a really fancy tool with you now. Do I think that it could be a part, could it be a participant in the room in more of a mobbing sense? Yes, I do. And I think that is actually a really good idea. We've done some experiments at Armakuni recently about what does it look like to do TDD with AI, and we have some really interesting outcomes from it. But we were wondering, does TDD look the same? Does if you have AI because of the way that it works in like really big chunks, or can we force it to break it down? Can we maintain ownership? Can we maintain accountability to the code while we use it? And we did this in pairs, like because as we do, we always work in pairs. So we had I think about 10 developers, 10 engineers in our company that broke into teams of different groups of with AI with TDD, AI without TDD, or people without AI but TDD. And I did ask them quite a bit about their experience in regards to pairing with AI, and it was quite interesting from across the groups. I remember talking to the people that did AI, let's say in big chunks without TDD. And I was like, how did your pairing feel? And they're like, well, it was good socially because you just kind of like asked AI to do a thing. I think everyone used Claude or Opus. Um, but they did, they were waiting for AI to do its thing and they just kind of socialized, right? But it was just okay. They said it was good for the social concept, but they felt like they weren't really sharing knowledge with each other, right? And then there was the ones that did AI pairing with the AI and TDD. With this group, well, mobbed with it, and they were able to figure out how to break it down. Actually, have this really good process where they were able to review each set of code and things like that. And I asked them how they felt about their pairing situation, and they said it felt like any other session, really, but our code was just written for us in these small chunks. But we were able to understand our code fully, like we were able to talk about it, discuss it, um, and have conversations around it, but also still maintain that camaraderie and still feel connected to each other, including the code, which I thought was really interesting. So you have like these like pairing can go awry, I think, with AI if you're using it in these big chunks, like these like where you don't allow for that space to discuss, to talk, to own your design, because that's obviously like with TDD especially, and the way that we pair, like the ping pong pairing or driver navigator pairing, um, it really helps open that platform up and give people time to talk and share their experiences or lead or not lead depending on who it is, because we don't believe in senior junior only type pairing, because it can be used for that, but for trading. But yeah, so there's like different aspects of it. I think the AI can help, and I think that mobbing with AI can also hinder if you don't use it correctly. But I don't think it should be just solo pairing, like just me and an AI tool, because it that you're missing half the point.
So, what, apart from not using it solo, are there any other kind of key learnings that you say came out of that?
What other key learnings did come out of that? Oh yeah, there are so many learnings. I haven't actually talked about it, posted much about it yet, because we were still figuring out some results from the surveys that we asked them. But this was just like initial findings. I think that was like for me, that was the biggest thing about it, was about this accountability towards your code, right? Also, this concept of what did you ask AI to do? So the ones that we had a couple groups doing AI big ask, right? So that means no TD. but I still asked them, I wanted it to be the best code that they can be, but don't necessarily do red, green refactor. I didn't want, I'm not looking for that. I do still want it to be high quality. You can get AI to do whatever you wish, really, but just don't do this TDD type process. Because we were curious if maybe does AI evolve the TDD process to something different than red green refactor? So we were kind of experimenting with what we can find, or can you just do a big ask? And we did find out that one person did a big ask, but it asked for tests up front. It asked for clean code principles, things like that. The principles that they normally would adhere to, and it was a kata that we made up, a flight booking system, and they actually ended up working. He said within 15 minutes. They said, and it was great. But then they were like, but that's not what they wanted. They wanted it to be broken down into chunks because when they got all of it, they were just like, I don't know any of this code. I was like, would you put it in production? Because you can see it works. It's like, would you put that in production? He goes, absolutely not. Because he was surprised at the speed it created this whole thing, but he's like, I can't vouch for it. I don't know anything about it. And as he's a really great, they're all really great engineers, and I was like, I wouldn't put this in production. I'd be so afraid if something breaks, I don't know what to do. And then that was interesting. So then he had so much. We gave them half a day to do this. They had so much time, they did it again, and they try to break it up in bigger chunks, not necessarily in TDD, but just being able to like break it down based off the requirements into smaller chunks. And he said that felt better. It wasn't great, but it felt better. Of course, it was slower, but he was able to break down what's happening and understanding it better, which was great. There was another group with AI without TDD as well, like just big asks, and they didn't necessarily ask for tests. They didn't actually look at the requirements. They literally just gave it to them, didn't even read what the kata was, just gave it to the AI, and it built the code. It was broken. They had to try to put tests back into it. It just wasn't working, and it was a mess. So they didn't actually end up finishing a working product, which was interesting. The people that did AI with TDD, they said it took them a while to figure out how to get their AI to slow down. It's like, I want you to build me this, like make this test fail. Of course, it doesn't want to, but they were able to figure out in a way, like they had to like constantly figure out how to show it and correct it. I think they said it took 3 or 4 times of correction before it understood. And after that, it worked amazingly. And they were able to review each bit of code before putting it in there. And so, like I was saying earlier, they really were connected to that code. And of course, then you have the people, they didn't quite finish, but they got quite far. I think it was like 70% into it. Then you had the people without AI at all. I don't know why, but they decided to go dark ages and didn't even have autocomplete. I did not put that on them. They did that to themselves. But they were pairing and they got about 1% in. But then I asked everyone at the end, who here would feel comfortable putting their code into production? The people that raised their hands were the ones that figured out how to do AI without TDD in smaller chunks. We had the AI with TDD, absolutely. They raised their hand the fastest for sure because they were so confident and it was almost working. And then the third group, which was the ones without AI, even though they only got 1%, they were like, yeah, put that in production. I have no problem with it. I know exactly what's in there and I have no problem with it. The only people that really didn't were the ones that did AI with big asks and they just had no idea what was in their code. So it really speaks to the concept of like, yes, you have speed, but you need to still maintain that accountability. How do we do that? And I'm always afraid now that people are like pushing AI to build all these like, oh, my tool built or just gave me 10,000 lines of working code. I'm like, that sounds horrendous. Because now you have to go through it and figure it out. And like, who says that that's like, can you maintain that? Can you add to it? Can you scale that? Like, probably not, because the way that the AI made it was just one big asks every time. And that's not how you build codes. If you want it to be maintainable, scalable, like it. So it is interesting. I can't wait to write about the experiment. So definitely keep a lookout for it in the next couple of weeks. But yeah, it's very eye-opening about the people aspect, like how they felt during this experiment, not just the code quality that they put up, but actually how they felt in regards to accountability, responsibility, pairing with their teammate, just the even the anxiety that they had, how the AI was able to produce so fast, from the 1% to they completely made a working product. Like, what does our professional identity look like after that moment? Like what value do I bring to this? So yeah, we asked some tough questions. So I'm excited to like share that with the world and see what everyone else is coming up with nowadays.
Yeah, that's interesting because there's a lot of hype around it pushing. You're just going to vibe code it or whatever. You'll throw this and it'll produce that 10,000 lines of code. I have even seen a few people claiming that they use AI every day and they produce about 10,000 lines of code every day that goes into production. I'm skeptical, to say the least.
Yeah.
That's is that code even called? Is it working? It's way too much to have
What
even
are you building?
glanced at.
Yeah. What are you building? Are you building even the right thing at that point? I couldn't imagine knowing what to build, ten, that I have 10,000 lines of code to build every day for a month. It's like, I don't think my product team could work fast enough.
Well, I mean, that's it. That's my biggest issue with this whole vibe coding idea. Is in the 30 years I've been involved in software engineering, getting somebody to say this is what it will do has always been the hardest bit. So yeah, getting enough requirements to produce 10,000 lines of code every day, day in, day out.
Yeah. I've actually experimented a bit with trying to produce, let's say, user stories and requirements with AI. I'm going to tell you right now, it's 50-50. I think it's still missing this like connection to what was written. Some of it's okay, but like it's it produces all of it. It produces all of it, and by the time you get to ticket, let's say 15, it's already off track. It's not an agile way of working. It's really obvious. I'm still experimenting to figure out if there is a way of doing it better in smaller chunks, other than just asking it per user story as you go along. But yeah, like we're all talking about AI and replacing coding, but how does AI affect product people, right? How can it help us get better user requirements, clearer user requirements, better outputs for things like that? So I'm not sure yet, but maybe I'm not on the right feeds, but I don't hear a lot about how AI is affecting product work yet.
I mean, it's not my area, but the thing I would think of immediately there is potentially being able to create a prototype. And again, thinking back to my early days of interacting with customers, the sooner we could show them something, a wireframe of this is what the GUI is going to look like, or you're going to feed this data in and this is a sample report or analysis you'll get out. The sooner we actually have something to look at, the sooner you'd elicit more requirements. And say, right, yes, I said I wanted that, but I was describing the wrong thing. What I really meant is I want this, this, and this. And oh, now I see it. That report doesn't look like we need this data. We need these columns. We need it grouped by date, then something. So having something to look at always made it easier to get the future requirements out. So potentially for product people, being able to mock something up quicker or
I have heard of
produce
that.
that MVP
Yeah,
might be useful.
I'm curious how that's going to end up because I've heard mixed reviews so far. I've heard that some product people are now like starting to use them as POCs, um, or some mocking whatever the customer is looking for. But it is interesting where that can go, like in regards to like where that can go awry, essentially. If when product people, I'm not saying all product people are like this, but let's say they don't have a very strong technical background. I still think product people should understand tech to some level if you're going to be a technical product owner. But where can that go awry in the sense of misunderstanding what it really takes to make it into production? Because obviously a POC to production is very, very different. Will that mess up um, how we convey this to the customer? What it actually looks like? Is it actually possible at the scale that you're asking for? So yeah, I'm interested to see how it goes, how it turns out.
Yeah, and you're right. We've all experienced that pain point where you show somebody a prototype or a proof of concept that's duct taped together in the back, and they go, "Well, it's nearly finished. Ship it."
Yeah,
It's like,
no,
no, no, it's not.
I've definitely had that from customers. They're like, "Yeah, we just want a PSC." So I make a PSC within a couple of weeks, like 2, 3 weeks maybe. And then they get back to us like, "Okay, can you make it into production now?" I was like, "No, I gotta restart from the beginning." I had asked you at the beginning, "Are you sure you want a PSC or are you actually looking for like an MVP?" And they're just like, "No, a PSC." I was like, "Okay." Like that, just let you know. I warned them. And then after that, yeah, they're like, "No, we actually wanted an MVP." I was like, "Well, it's not the same. This is not designed with that in mind. I'm gonna have to start all over again." So because POC to actually production is actually really painful sometimes.
Absolutely. Conscious of time, Shane. So, do you have time
Uh,
for one more question?
yeah, sure.
Awesome. So, you mentioned junior senior pairing earlier, and you don't use that. I'd like to dig into that a little bit more because I think one of my biggest disasters in pair programming was pairing junior and senior with the idea that the senior would share some of their knowledge with the junior, and it went horribly wrong. And
No.
some of my biggest successes have been when juniors and seniors have shared,
Hmm.
including me as a senior person pairing with a junior guy, and I learnt from them. So I thought that was cool. What were you hinting at there when you mentioned it earlier?
Well, I do believe in senior junior pairing, but I think that because I do a lot of like as a consultant, I go in and I rapidly like do discoveries about organizational processes, culture, things like that, how software engineering is done. And a lot of the times I ask people, "Do you pair?" And they're like, "Yes, we pair." It's like, okay. And I always have to ask in what instances, because when I say pair, I mean pair on just about everything.
Mm-hmm.
But when they say we pair, they really mean onboarding or they mean senior junior issues, like they're having some, or they're like really like on a hard problem or something. So they do it on these very specific instances, and that's not what I mean, right? Because pairing does it. It is helpful on those, but not. But it's more helpful if it becomes a culture throughout your team and throughout your organization. So I always ask this. I do think it is important to pair, um, but yeah, there are those caveats, right? Does the senior expect to be this the main contributor? Are they always going to be the driver or the navigator or whatever that is? Or are they going to actually switch roles so the junior can actually learn the other way of doing things, or of actually pointing out where to go and where to do? Or are they just going to be the one that's just typing based off of what the senior is telling them to do? So I always advocate when for pairing to be correct is or most helpful, let's say, is if you rotate your pairs often. Um, so you don't always just have, let's say, your team of 6 and you had the same 3 pairs the entire like for the next year. Like that's horrible because you don't get to share knowledge across everyone, and that's not the point. Um, to also mix them in because you don't want senior junior all the time. You want senior senior sometimes. You want junior junior sometimes. Sometimes you want junior senior senior junior. Like you want all the mixes because I think it teaches everyone something. I think there's lots of knowledge to share, and I think juniors are valuable in lots of different ways. Seniors are valuable for sure. Everyone knows that they're valuable. They generally tend to have the most knowledge in the team, the most experience, but juniors also, especially newcomers, not just juniors, but newcomers have like these fresh eyes on things and they slow down, they ask a lot of questions, and it actually matures that senior engineer, right? Like sometimes I have juniors asking me questions. They're like, "Why do you do this? Why do you do that?" I was like, "I have no idea anymore. It's been years. Let me think about that." Or just like some really basic questions. You're like, "I have no idea anymore. Let me think." Or, "Yeah, that's a good question." They make you slow down. And I think that's also really important. Like, I know that people are worried that pairing slows people down, which doesn't necessarily if you think about the quality aspect of it and the complete inaccuracy, the lack of rework, the sharing knowledge. Yes, it, it can look like it slows down. But there's also, if you have, let's say, the solo rock star engineer, if you want to use that term, they're all by themselves and they are the 10x engineer that builds this whole thing. And then you ask him to show someone what's going on, what's like how all this works, and they're like, "Oh, I don't have time for that." It's like, no, I'm sorry. I know you're probably going to be really frustrated for a little bit, but you have to learn how to slow down so your team can also understand what's going on. It's a team sport here. So, uh, yeah, they need to learn how to slow down. And I think it's important for them to do that, to just mature in themselves, but also for the junior to also be able to contribute to that conversation, which I think is important.
Yeah, and some of the best learning I've had has been when you've had those questions from someone that's new to the team or somebody that's new to the industry, so junior, asking, why, or why does it work like that? And you've got to scrape your memory or go and think, actually, I don't really know this as well as I thought. I've got to go and figure it out and find out. And those are great learning opportunities, which is why I think it's always a mistake when you see people say we only have seniors on the team. We are missing so much of a chance for that seniors to learn leadership, to learn to mentor, to learn to coach, and to get those questions that actually reinforce their knowledge and really dig into it.
Or just the enthusiasm that juniors have to learn so much. I love that.
Yeah,
They're always like, I want that. I want to learn that. I want to do this in my career. Maybe this, maybe this. I'm like, yeah, let's do all of it. Yeah, I think it's
yeah.
a great time.
That enthusiasm is great from anyone, isn't it? Awesome. Well, thank you, Shane. We've gone slightly over our time. Really enjoyed talking to you about it. If anyone's interested in Armakuni and what you've got to write about, how should they best get in contact with you? And don't worry about sparing the links. We'll put them in the show notes.
Yeah, just hit me up on LinkedIn, and I'm usually trolling around. So yeah, absolutely, just hit me up, and I have no problem having a conversation with people.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Shane. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, you too. Thanks.
I hope you enjoyed that episode of Coding Chats. If you did, please like and subscribe. And feel free to check out these other videos on a similar topic.